we're just so glad that everyone came. Alice?
I have one question also that kind of follows up with Kathy. When were there official records or plotting of the cemetery? At what point did that start? I mean, how?
I'm not sure, but the records burnt. So the township, the only records they have starts in 1955, I think.
Right.
So all we have is just what we wrote down from the stones.
That's why you can't identify
Right,
some of them.
right.
I understand.
Right. The question was about identifying some of the graves when were records started or kept or whatever. And obviously the first record keeping would have been by a local sexton who just took care of the cemetery. Sometime in the 1950s, most cemeteries were turned over, if not in the 50s, by the 60s, to township requirements that they take care of them. And so that was part of the Michigan Constitution changes in the 60s. And so then it became the job of the townships to maintain cemeteries, except for those religious ones, St. Mike's, or one that's affiliated with a church. So that's how that came about, and the township continues to maintain records of both graves and interments, just of ashes even. They need to keep track of all of that. And so the sexton makes sure that the township has those dual records. And additional parcels can be, the township is responsible for the deeds and the purchase of cemetery lots. So, good question.
I have something I'd like to say. Barb, just a sec.
No problem.
I was asked to explain, there's a grave in the back in the woods, and it's the Gingrich girl. What is her first name? Lavina. At one time, the cemetery went back in the woods. The Gingriches was buried here, and they dug up most of the graves and took them over to Wademan, I believe. But for some reason, this little girl was left, and we believe it's because she had, diphtheria, and they didn't dare open the grave. But there is a grave in the back, and it still has the tombstone. The township takes care of it. It's maintained. How far back is it?
You can see it if you just step right in right there.
Yeah, if you step right
There
there,
is a
you can
stone.
see the stone.
Okay.
Barb.
This is a little off topic of our veterans, but Linda and I were already talking about it today. My grandpa was Howard Myers. His mother was Alice Lett, who died young, when the kids were young. If anybody here knows anything about her or her parents, I mean, clearly related a lot. We've struggled for decades. Peggy Sawyer worked on it with me for many years. If anybody has any information, I would love it, because, we've really done a lot of research, and the few documents on her list her dad as June Lett. Who that is, we don't know, we can't find. So, I don't know, maybe some of the older people knew more about the family. But since my grandpa moved to Grand Rapids and passed for white, growing up, I didn't know the families. And unfortunately, he died before we could ever talk about it. So it's been a long search, but I would appreciate if anybody knows anything about my Myers.
She is the genealogy guru expert, and so if you have an interest in genealogy, make sure you touch base there.
Yeah,
Wonderful.
I do work on it.